Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Business and Economy Today. Business and Economy Today is a program put together to inform and also educate our numerous viewers about trending issues in the nation's economy. I am Adegboyega Labero, thanking you for finding time to join us. In this episode, we shall be taking a look at topical issues with a distinguished member of the organized private sector. He is the Director General of the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, Mr. Timothy Olawale. We started by asking him to tell us issues with special reference to contradictions in the regulatory environment, that is with a particular reference to ease of doing business. And he told us some of the issues that should enable us experience ease of doing business, that is a reform of the power sector, repair of bad road networks, ensuring a good security situation in Nigeria, and putting together consistent policy of the government. We also wanted to know the meaning of contradiction in the regulatory environment. He told us, well, our regulatory agencies should not take delight in shutting down businesses. He says they should rather support businesses. This and many more will come your way after this break. If you're just joining us or you're just tuning in, the program is Business and Economy Today. We told you about a meeting with a member of the organized private sector, Mr. Timothy Olawale, the Director General of the Nigerian Employer Consultative Association. Before that interview, here is the business news. The Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, has directed the newly inaugurated Technical Tax Policy Drafting Committee to harmonize the various tax and excise law reforms in the proposed finance bill. The FIRS chairman, Mr. Babatunde Fowler, gave the directive at the inaugural meeting of reconstituted National Tax Policy Implementation Committee in Abuja. Fowler appealed to the technical committee to work assiduously to produce a singular set of fiscal measures that will be considered and approved by the constituted NTPIC in the next few weeks. Stakeholders in the agricultural sector in Nigeria have posited that the signing of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement AfCFTA by President Muhammadu Buhari requires urgent and huge investment in the very important sector of the economy. They argued that massive and unprecedented investment in the sector will boost domestic consumption, rural infrastructure development, and export promotion, with many opportunities for the country to exploit. The stakeholders made this known in a communique issued in Abuja after a two-day stakeholders consultative meeting on the 2020 agricultural budget, which held in Lokoja, Kogi State. Organizers of the meeting included Action Aid Nigeria, Oxfam Nigeria, and the ECOWAS Commission and CAADP, Non-State Actors Coalition, CNC, in collaboration with Ministry of Budget and Planning. They called for allocations by the Comprehensive Agricultural Development Program, CAADP, in the 2019 agricultural budget to be released 100%. Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, says it will increase the cash reserve ratio, CRR, of banks that refuse to meet the minimum lending threshold to customers to 50% as from September 30th, 2009. Central Bank of Nigeria Governor Godwin Emefiele, who stated this while answering questions shortly after the Monetary Policy Committee meeting, said the bank's management was seeking to obey a directive of MPC to compel banks to lend to the economy instead of investing only in government securities. The central bank governor announced that the MPC resolved to leave the MPR, otherwise known as interest rate, at 13.5%. It also retained other parameters, including cash reserve requirement (CRR) at 12.5% and liquidity ratio at 30%. And now to the capital market. Capital market operators said the restoration of value-added tax (VAT) on capital market operations, on capital market transactions, would discourage investors from the market and weaken financial inclusion drive of the federal government. The operators were reacting to government's plan to restore VAT on all capital market transactions effective from July 25th. They also said that the restoration will further dampen investors' confidence in the market and as well as discourage foreign participation. Consequently, charges on transactions on the Nigerian capital market suspended in 2014 will be reintroduced effective from July 25th, 2019. The charges suspended by former coordinating Minister of the Economy and Minister of Finance, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, were designed to encourage increased trading activities in the market. In 2014, Okonjo-Iweala set up a committee to revive activities on the exchange following financial crisis and extended periods of negative market sentiment recorded on the bourse in previous years. And with that, we come to the end of the business segment of Business and Economy Today. You're welcome back. The program is Business and Economy Today, coming to you from the studios of IATV in Lagos. I am Adegboyega Labiron. I told you shortly before I had that short break that I had an interview with a distinguished member of the organized private sector. He is Mr. Timothy Olawale. Mr. Timothy Olawale is the Director General at the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association. And we started by asking him to tell us issues relating to ease of doing business and with a particular reference to contradictions in the regulatory environment. Let's listen to that.
Well, let me start on the note of appreciation to the Office of the Vice President and of course by extension the federal government on the attempts at providing succor for organized businesses by instituting PEBEC, which is the Presidential Enabling Business Environment organization that was set up by them to give life to the aspiration of government to ensure ease of doing business, which also resulted in the improvement in the ranking of Nigeria in the Ease of Doing Business Index. Having said that, I also know that government in its engagement with organized businesses has also been encouraging us to come up with a review which will enable us to give feedback to the federal government on how it's doing with regards to ease of doing business. Having established the fact that the federal government meant well, the only contradiction there, because government as far as we are concerned is one, is the activities of some of the regulatory bodies or agencies of government, which is actually undermining the efforts of the federal government. And what do I mean? A situation where regulatory bodies believe that the more funds or revenue it generates, even at the detriment of business, through sanctions that are imposed outside the provisions of the enabling law for those regulatory agencies, is benchmark according to them for measuring whether they are performing or not performing. It's an anomaly and a contradiction to what government is actually aspiring to achieve. Regulatory bodies are supposed to support business. All agencies of government are supposed to support business, to grow businesses, to ensure businesses are competitive and sustainable. organized businesses are not adverse to regulation. But all we are saying is that it must be within the ambit of the relevant laws that set up those agencies of government. So our protests and complaints or concerns is basically when they act outside the law, to shut down businesses, to impose sanctions, or to ensure that they make collections or impose tariffs or levies which are outside the law to justify their existence. So these are the contradictions. We've escalated this to the attention of the executive, and we believe that in this second term of President Muhammadu Buhari, government will do much by reining them in so that all hands will be on deck to ensure that the aspiration and the efforts of the federal government through PEBEC in ensuring the ease of doing business is fully achieved.
You're welcome back. That was the Director General at the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, Mr. Timothy Olawale. We asked him to explain ease of doing business in Nigeria with a particular reference to terminology, which is the contradictions in the regulatory environment. We now move over to yet another segment of the interview where members of the organized private sector visited Mr. President in Abuja, and they discussed issues relating to manufacturing, agricultural sector, and what the president should do in order to provide employment for the teeming unemployed population in Nigeria. Let's listen to that portion of the interview.
Covers all sorts of issues that are concerned to the organized businesses. It was in his response that he also alluded to the fact that one of the key focus of government in the second term will be the creation of employment for the teeming youths of Nigeria. And we totally agree with him that this is long overdue. However, our position is that for government to really succeed in job creation, number one, it has to be in partnership with organized businesses in the private sector, because the real creator of jobs are the real sector of the economy, the manufacturing and the agricultural sector. And when you do put machineries in place to drive productivity in these two sectors, they discover that it's just natural consequence for jobs to be created massively. And that's why we commend government's initiative, especially at encouraging the revitalization of some industrial sectors that are either to suffer the setbacks, like the textile sector, for instance, and the different initiatives in boosting agricultural sector to ensure that there is value-add production of food in Nigeria, as well as the resuscitation of our industries that are suffering, they are near comatose. So, for instance, the central bank initiative or intervention to empower farmers to the tune of 750 billion naira is commendable. We hope it achieves its target of really getting to the farmers, and it's supposed to be a revolving facility so that many more will benefit. In the same vein, the ban on the importation of, not total ban on importation of textile material, but rather the withdrawal of forex through official window to those business people importing textile material. It's also commendable because it's actually supposed to boost and encourage local production of textile material, and so on and so forth. These are the directions to go, and we believe government will sustain it. It will not just be a flash in the pan. And this can also be applied to every other sectors that are involved in production and manufacturing. And one more thing, patronage of made in Nigeria goods, because what's the essence of boosting this local production if it's not patronized? We gave an example last week. If Nigeria government, as a matter of deliberate policy, can insist that military uniforms, the dresses, the boots, and every other accessory are locally produced. Strict policy, deliberate policy by government definitely is going to boost local producers of these items. It's going to support and further boost the textile industry, the shoes producers in Aba area is going to boost. And mind you, what are being produced by these local manufacturers are top quality that can measure up to goods in any part of the world. And because we do not appreciate what is our own, that's why you see an Aba-made shoe and you see a label of made in Italy there, because of the mentality of our people. Most of the foreign shoes that we buy locally are made in Aba, and we assume that, oh, they are imported, and we cherish them. So there should be deliberate policies to encourage local production. We should buy our own, starting with government patronage. Same thing with even the automotive industry. Who says government cannot make a deliberate policy that all government vehicles should be by local auto assembly, like Innocent, for instance, and so on and so forth. The examples are endless, but there should be political way and deliberate policy to encourage local production, and this will translate into massive job creation.
You're welcome back. That was the Director General of the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, Mr. Timothy Olawale. He told us a bit of the meeting the Executive Council of the Nigerian Employer Consultative Association had with Mr. President in Abuja. We now move over to yet another segment of the interview where we asked Mr. Timothy Olawale to explain what could be done with a view to reviving some companies that are already in the doldrum. Some companies are already in the doldrum. Remember, some textile companies in Oshodi, NTM in Kano, and some other companies who left Nigeria because of some issues relating to power and some other economic related issues, especially foreign exchange. Let's listen to that from Mr. Timothy Olawale, the Director General at the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association.
It's exactly what we have said. It's not new to them. They are already working towards that. It's not that government will deliberately go and revive these factories. It is the enabling environment that government needs to create. And that's what we are all working towards jointly in collaboration with government. Once the enabling environment is there, once businesses can compete effectively with their counterparts from outside the country, manufacturers will naturally want to plow investment into the system. So it is the enabling environment that government should ensure, beyond even the old ones that are moribund that we are talking of reviving. New ones will crop up, but the conditions must be right to encourage investment. And all we've been talking about, the issue of infrastructure, the issue of policies, and so on and so forth, borders on enabling environment, including even the operations of the regulatory bodies, the tax authorities, and so on and so forth. These borders of policies of government. These are what will determine whether investors who decided to pack back and leave the shores of the country will come back, or new investment will also flow into the country.
You're welcome back. Over now to yet another segment of the interview where we requested that the organized private sector should explain how the workability of directive from the Central Bank of Nigeria where 60% of the deposit should be given to the real sector as loan. We wanted to know how can that be possible? How is it going to be workable? So, and all he said was he commended the directive of the Central Bank of Nigeria, but queried the sincerity on the part of bankers. Let's listen to that portion of the interview as well.
The ideal, we've been talking of job creation and ease of doing business. This policy is the right way to go. Unfortunately, banks are businesses, and their primary objective is also profitability. If, for instance, they can just invest in treasury bills, no sweat, no effort, and the windfall is immense, than for them to give their credit facility to the real sector with the attendant issue of the stress of chasing after them to repay. If you are the businessman, what option will you go after? So it takes, number one, patriotism for them to really act on that. Number two, it also takes sound government policy to ensure that rather than patronizing, allowing commercial banks to lend to federal government, lending should be from the generality of Nigerians, not commercial banks. And let it be that commercial banks, as part of their credit portfolio, are directed to focus on the real sector of the economy, rather than government buying or taking credit from them and encouraging them to buy treasury bills. This crowds out the private sector from credit, access to credit. And even when they even lend to the private sector, it is at killing rate that even makes such a funds unattractive. Imagine a bank offering you a facility at a rate of 24%. What type of business do you want to put it into? Then, rather than long-term facility, they want to call in their funds at short term. This is not encouraging to the sector of the economy. They show patriotism, they should also show interest in resolving the national, or pursuing the national economic agenda, which will create massive jobs and resolve our economic challenges, our socio-economic challenges. And this is one way.
You're welcome back. You just listened to this particular episode of Business and Economy. We have actually, where we had an interview with the Director General of the Nigerian Employer Consultative Association, Mr. Timothy Olawale. It was very, very topical. We started by asking him to explain ease of doing business in Nigeria with a particular reference to contradictions in the regulatory environment. We also went to we also asked him to explain a couple of those issues discussed with Mr. President when the Executive Council of NECA visited Mr. President in Abuja. We also requested him to explain what could be done with a view to revive those companies that are presently in the doldrum. We also asked issues relating to stamp duties deduction, a directive from the Central Bank of Nigeria to some of the banks. But according to the organized private sector, a move is being made to make sure that whatever was deducted is refunded in the name of stamp duties. And finally, on the program, we also discussed 60% of deposit from banks, by banks as a loan to members of the real sector. We wanted to know how realistic is that, how workable is that. But according to the Director General, he says it's important to make sure the rate has a human face. If the rate at which that lending will be made doesn't have a human face, nothing has actually changed. We also went to discuss foreign exchange. that there will not be any high pressure on the foreign exchange if the infrastructure here in Nigeria are in good shape. And with that, we come to the end of this week's episode of Business and Economy Today, a program put together to inform and also educate our numerous viewers about contemporary developments in the world of the nation's economy. I am Adegboyega Labiron on behalf of my producer, Olufunke Fadugba, and my technical director, Segun Olowokere, thanking you for joining us and asking you to join us next week for yet another episode of Business and Economy Today. And until that time, it's bye for now.
Audio Jungle.